So we're going to be covering how to create elements. We're going to create a couple buttons on the page and apply event listeners to those elements that are created, and show you how you can set it different options, such as if you only want it clicked once. And there's also an option that we're going to be reviewing that's going to allow us to remove the event listener. And also we're going to be updating the style properties. So the function is going to be that whenever the button gets clicked, that the first time it's going to go red, and if the button has a background of red, then it's going to go blue and it's going to remove the event listener, so you're only going to be able to click it twice. So the first click turns it red, the second click turns it blue and removes the event listener, and we're outputting into the console every time that element gets clicked, so we can see that we're not able to click it more than once for each one of those page elements. And this is all going into the element with a class of output, and generating these elements dynamically with JavaScript code, and applying the style properties to them as well with JavaScript code. So open up your editor, select the JavaScript within the JavaScript code, the page element with the output, and we're going to apply some properties to it. So first off, let's add in some text content, and the text content will say click me. So this is going to be our clickable area on the page, and let's make it clickable now. So within any element, they have a bunch of different properties that you can add, and one of them is adding the event listener. So this is a method that we can add, and this is going to be triggering an event to occur if this element does get clicked, or whatever the event that we're listening for that's defined within the event listener. And the second parameter, it's going to expect a function, and then whatever we want to happen whenever that event is triggered is going to go within the function. So right now we're going to output the event object and the target value from the event object, and the target is going to be the element that triggered the event itself. So it's going to be selecting that output element. So let's go into the console, we'll clear the console, and then we'll click the button, and we see whenever we get it clicked, it's going to be referenced to the event target, which is also the output element, and it's going to output that into the page. So this is going to be the same if we make a selection, and if we select the output element and we click it, it's still going to be referencing that same object. And if we're doing a console log, and if we're referencing this, it's going to reference the window object, because this event is being attached to the window itself, so it's not referencing the current element that is going to be triggering it. So this block of code, whenever you're using this is going to reference the parent scope, which is going to be the window object and not the element itself. So just keep that in mind. So if you do want to select the element, you've got it passed within the event target, and then also within the element that you've selected within the JavaScript code, and that's how you can reference the element that triggered the event. There's more information over at the Mozilla Developer Network for the event target, and this is referring to the element that we're adding that event to. And it sets up a function that gets called whenever the event is triggered. There's some benefits to using the add event listeners. They do have, and they also have examples of how to use it. There's options that you can add to it. There's the use capture, which will set which direction the flow. So these are both optional, so you don't have to include them, although you can include them if you want some additional functionality, such as options. There's an option here to use once. So that will only allow it to be clickable once. And I'll show you how to apply that as an example. So when we do click it within the comments, if we do provide the options, and this is expecting within an object format, the options, and we can select here the value for once and set that to true. So now when we go back to our element and we click it, we're only able to click it one time, and it's going to remove the ability to click it multiple times. There's also the use capture. So this is used if you have elements that are nested within other elements to control the flow of the event listener. So where the events get registered, either they're going from the top down or from the bottom up. So you can have control. By default, it's going to be set to false. So if you do need to have it bubbling in the opposite order, then you can set that to true as well. And of course, they do have more examples of how you can write and add different events. You can also remove events. So you need to specify the event that you want to remove, and then the function that you want to remove off of that event. So if, for instance, we've got the event listener, and I'll just comment out this code, and what we're going to do this time is once it gets clicked, that we're going to remove out that function for it. So referencing it to a function, and you can also have a named value as long as it's a function that is being expected here. And I'll just call it updater, and then create a function that's going to handle that click. So same name, updater, passing in the event object, and we can see the event object, so event target element if we want. So that's so we can select the element that triggered the event. So in case we have more than one element possibly triggering the event. So here we can also select the event target, and then we can remove the event listener. And we need to specify the event trigger and then also the function that we're removing. So what will happen now is once we click it once, it's going to remove the event object. So the same thing that we saw with the once, and this gives you some more options with what you can do within this block of code when you want to do the removing. And you can also apply conditions on if you want to remove it or not. So let's try this out where we're going to select a couple elements and we're going to add them to the page. And I'm also going to update the editor to do a word wrap. And where we saw last time where we can add in page elements. So using the query selector, we'll select and create a button. And then for the output, we're going to append the button 1. And then instead of the output text, it will be referencing the button 1. And instead of output having the event on it, we're going to add it to button 1. And we'll add a couple other buttons to the page. So that will be button 2. And click me, and this one will have a different value there. And this one can say 1, and that one can say 2 for the click. And this should actually be create element. So we're throwing the error there. So just update that to create the element instead of making a query selector on the button. And that gives us the 2 buttons that whenever they get clicked, they're going to trigger that function. Let's add in to the other button. So button 2, we'll add in that same function for the updater. So they're referencing the element, and then once it gets clicked, it's going to remove it off the element. So we can also do something where if we want to select the element, disabled, and set that to be true. So once it gets clicked, we can disable the button. And we can also apply style properties to it. And because this is an object, if we want to shorten the code and we don't always want to refer to the element target, we can set up a variable name to reference that object. And then for the object itself, we can set and update maybe the style properties, so background color, and set that to red. So now once it gets clicked, it's going to go red, and it's not going to be clickable anymore. And that will go the same for the second one. Once we click it, it will go red. You can also get, so just as we're setting the properties, we can get the properties. So we can check to see if the element style background color is equal to red. And if it's not, then we'll set it to red. And then there we can remove the event listener from it. Else, and let's set it to, so what do you think this code is going to do? And when we click the button, it's going to set it to blue because this condition is not true. It's not red, or it's not equal to red. So it's going to actually set it to blue. So here we need to set it to red, and then if it is red, then we're going to turn it blue. So now we're turning it red, and the next time we click it, it's going to go blue, and that condition is going to be true, so then it's going to remove the event listener. So that gives us the ability to click the elements twice before we remove the event listener from the element. I'll try that again. So first it will go red, and then it will go blue. And you can set various style properties to the elements as needed. Go ahead and try it out within your own code. Create some elements, add some event listeners to the elements, and then update the style properties. And you can also select to remove the event listener from the element once it gets clicked on the second time.